We live in the most remarkable era of wealth creation the world has ever seen. Yet most people wake up every morning and walk the same road, the road of average. They dream in secret, doubt in public, and wonder why the world passes them by. Napoleon Hill once studied the greatest minds of his time and distilled one truth: riches begin in the mind before they appear in the bank. But in 2026, that truth hits harder than ever. Technology has leveled the playing field. Information is free. Opportunity is everywhere. The only thing separating you from the life you want is the story you keep telling yourself. This is your moment to rewrite that story. Success is not reserved for the lucky, the privileged, or the talented. It belongs to those who decide, relentlessly, that they will have it. The question is not whether wealth is possible for you. The question is whether you are willing to think, to act, and to grow into the version of yourself that wealth demands. Today, that journey begins, and it begins right here, right now, with you. There is a difference between wanting something and needing it with every cell in your body. Most people want success the same way they want good weather, passively, quietly, without truly committing to it. They daydream about wealth. They scroll past the success stories of others, and they convince themselves that someday, when the conditions are right, they will finally make their move. But that day never comes, because desire without intensity is just decoration. It fills the walls of your mind with pretty pictures and leaves you exactly where you started. Napoleon Hill did not study 100 millionaires and discover that they were smarter than everyone else. He did not find that they were luckier, better connected, or born into the right families. What he found, again and again across every industry and every era, was one common thread: they had decided. Not hoped, not tried, not considered. They had made an irreversible, bone-deep decision about what they were going to achieve, and that decision became the filter through which every single day was lived. Desire at that level is not a feeling. It is a direction. It is the force that makes a person walk past distractions, push through failure, and rise earlier than the rest of the world, because the pull toward the goal is stronger than the pull toward comfort. A wish whispers. A burning desire commands. One fades by morning, the other builds an empire before noon. Think about the word burning for a moment. Hill chose it deliberately. A burn does not ask permission. A burn does not take a day off because the mood is wrong or the market is uncertain. When something is burning, it consumes everything around it until there is nothing left but the result. That is what the right kind of desire does to a person's life. It consumes the excuses. It burns through the fear. It dissolves the hesitation that keeps ordinary people standing still while extraordinary lives pass them by. You cannot fake this kind of desire, and you cannot manufacture it on demand, but you can find it if you are honest enough to ask yourself what you truly want, not what you have been told to want. In 2026, the world is noisier than it has ever been. There are 1,000 voices every single day telling you where to look, what to buy, who to become, and what to settle for. The person without a burning desire is completely at the mercy of that noise. They drift. They react. They spend their energy responding to other people's agendas instead of building their own. But the person who carries a clear, fierce, personal desire inside them, that person moves through the noise like it does not exist. They know where they are going, which means every decision becomes simple. Every morning becomes purposeful. Every setback becomes a temporary detour, not a permanent destination. The first question this speech places in your hands is not how. It is not when. And it is not whether you are ready. The first question is, what do you want so deeply that the thought of never achieving it is more painful than the hardest work it would take to get there? Because when you find that thing, when you hold it in your mind clearly and completely, and you feel the weight of it in your chest, something shifts inside you. The noise quiets. The path sharpens. and a force begins to build in you that the world has never quite figured out how to stop. That force has a name, and it is only the beginning of what we need to talk about. Now that desire has been ignited, there is something far more urgent we need to confront. Because desire alone, without the right internal environment to sustain it, will burn out before it ever becomes anything real. You can want success with everything you have, but if the mind carrying that desire is polluted with doubt, comparison, and fear, then desire becomes nothing more than frustration dressed in ambition. The mind is not just a tool you use to achieve wealth. It is the territory in which wealth is first built, long before a single dollar ever changes hands. And in 2026, that territory is under attack every single moment of every single day. The poverty mindset is not something that only visits people with empty bank accounts. It lives in boardrooms. It sits inside people who earn six figures and still feel like imposters. It whispers to the entrepreneur at 2 in the morning that they are not enough, that someone else is doing it better, that the window of opportunity has already closed. It feeds on comparison. And in a world where everyone's highlight reel is one scroll away, comparison has never been more accessible or more dangerous. Every time you measure your beginning against someone else's middle, you are letting the poverty mindset win. And when it wins, it does not just stop you from growing. It convinces you that not growing is the safe choice. The wealthiest real estate on earth is not in Manhattan or Dubai. It is the 6 inches between your ears, and most people let it sit vacant. Rich thinking is not optimism in disguise. It is not telling yourself that everything is fine when it is not. Rich thinking is the disciplined practice of directing your mind toward possibility, while everyone around you is rehearsing problems. It is waking up and choosing, consciously, deliberately, to feed your mind with evidence of what is working, what is growing, and what is within reach, rather than cataloging everything that is broken and out of reach. This is not naive. This is strategic. Because the thoughts you repeat most often become the lens through which you interpret every opportunity, every setback, and every conversation. Change the lens, and you change what you are able to see, and therefore, what you are able to seize. Gratitude is not a soft concept reserved for journals and Sunday mornings. It is one of the most powerful performance tools available to a wealth builder. When you train your mind to consistently recognize what is already working in your life, you are signaling to your brain that you exist in an environment of abundance rather than scarcity. And a brain that believes in abundance takes risks. It reaches. It creates. A brain convinced of scarcity hoards, hesitates, and shrinks. The difference between those two brains, operating in two otherwise identical people with identical opportunities, will produce wildly different financial realities within 5 years. Not because of luck. Because of the internal dialogue that ran on repeat, quietly shaping every decision made along the way. You must guard your mind the way a CEO guards the culture of a company, because that is exactly what it is. Every piece of content you consume, every conversation you allow to occupy your attention, every voice you give permission to live inside your head is either building the asset or degrading it. This means making hard choices. It means walking away from environments that normalize mediocrity. It means turning off the noise that celebrates complaint and turning toward the voices that expand what you believe is possible for someone like you. Your mind is the first investment, the most important investment, and the one that every other result in your life will flow directly from. But here is what nobody tells you about mastering your mindset. It is not enough to simply think well. At some point, the thinking has to collide with something concrete, something real, something the world can actually measure and reward. Because a sharp, abundant, powerful mind sitting still is still just potential. And potential, without direction, without a specific vehicle pointed toward a destination, stays forever in the realm of almost. Which is exactly why what we need to talk about next is not how you think, It is what you know, and more importantly, what you are willing to master. We live in an age where information is the most abundantly available resource on the planet. You can learn the fundamentals of investing, coding, marketing, medicine, or engineering before your morning coffee goes cold. Entire university curricula are sitting free on YouTube. Libraries of expertise are one search away. And yet, and this is the great paradox of our time, most people know a little about a great many things and are handsomely paid for almost none of it. Because the world does not reward the person who has sampled everything. It never has. The world rewards, generously and consistently, the person who has gone so deep into one thing that they have become the answer to a problem other people cannot solve alone. General knowledge is the education that gets you to the table. Specialized knowledge is what earns you a seat at the head of it. Think about every person you know who has built real, lasting, undeniable wealth. Not inherited it, not stumbled into it, but built it from a starting point that looked a great deal like yours. Almost without exception, you will find that they identified one domain, one craft, one specific area of value, and they went further into it than anyone around them was willing to go. They became the person people called. They became the name that traveled ahead of them into rooms they had not yet entered. That level of positioning is not achieved by being generally capable. It is achieved by being specifically, unmistakably excellent at the one thing the market is willing to pay a premium for. The market does not pay for what you know. It pays for what you can do with what you know, that nobody else around you can replicate. In 2026, this truth cuts even deeper than it did in Hill's time. Artificial intelligence has quietly begun doing the work of the generalist faster, cheaper, and with fewer complaints than any human ever could. The jobs that required broad, surface-level knowledge are being automated at a pace that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. But here is what artificial intelligence cannot replicate: the deeply human, deeply practiced, deeply contextual mastery that comes from years of immersion in a specific field. The nuance, the judgment, the ability to read a room, sense what is missing, and produce something that has never existed before. That is the territory of the specialist. And as the generalist lane narrows, the specialist lane widens into a highway. The investment required to build specialized knowledge is not primarily financial. It is something far more scarce and far more precious. It is time and focused attention, consistently applied over a long enough period that most people give up before the compound returns arrive. This is where the burning desire from our first conversation becomes essential again, because mastery is not glamorous in the middle. In the middle, it is repetitive. It is humbling. It demands that you stay in the room long after the initial excitement has faded and the learning curve has made you feel temporarily incompetent. Every master was once a beginner who refused to stay a beginner. That refusal, stubborn, quiet, daily, is what separates the expert the world seeks from the amateur the world overlooks. Positioning is the bridge between knowledge and income. You can possess extraordinary expertise and still earn ordinary wages if the right people never discover that the expertise exists. This is why the specialist must also become a communicator, someone who can articulate, demonstrate, and make visible the specific value they carry. Whether through content, through reputation, through a body of work, or through the quality of results delivered to every single client or employer, the specialist must ensure that their knowledge does not remain a private secret. It must travel. It must be felt by others. It must generate a trail that leads opportunity back to its source, again and again, with increasing velocity. So the question you must sit with after leaving this room is not what do I know, but what am I willing to become undeniably good at, and am I prepared to invest the focused, relentless, unglamorous hours that true mastery demands? Because once that decision is made and the commitment is honored, something remarkable begins to happen. Opportunities that once passed you by start slowing down and turning toward you. Conversations change. Introductions happen. Doors open that were previously not even visible from where you were standing. But knowledge, no matter how deep, no matter how rare, will only carry you to the edge of the result. What happens next requires something that no classroom and no course can teach you. It requires something that must come entirely from within. There is a graveyard that nobody talks about. It is not marked with stone, and it has no address, but it is the most crowded place on earth. It is filled with brilliant ideas that were never launched, businesses that were never started, books that were never written, and lives that were never fully lived, not because the people who carried them lacked desire, and not because they lacked knowledge, but because they waited. They waited for certainty. They waited for the perfect plan, the perfect time, the perfect version of themselves that was always just a little further down the road. And while they waited, the world moved on without them, and the dream quietly calcified into regret. Action is the only thing that separates the graveyard from a legacy. The spell of poverty is not primarily about money. It is about inertia. It is the invisible force that keeps a person in the same patterns, the same conversations, the same results year after year, despite the fact that they are fully aware something needs to change. Inertia is comfortable in the worst possible way. It asks nothing of you, demands no courage, and delivers no consequences today. The consequences arrive later, slowly, and by the time they are undeniable, years have passed, and the cost of waiting has become enormous. Breaking that spell requires one thing, and one thing only: a move. Not a perfect move. Not a strategic, fully researched, risk-free move. Just a move. Forward. Now. With whatever is available to you in this moment, imperfect as it may be. The world has never built a statue to honor someone who had a great plan. Every statue ever raised was built for someone who acted. Massive action is misunderstood by most people as a single dramatic event, a launch, a leap, a moment of explosive decision. But the millionaires who have studied and lived this principle will tell you that massive action is far less cinematic than that. It is the accumulation of small, consistent, courageous moves made daily, long before any visible result confirms that they are working. It is sending the email when fear says wait. It is publishing the work when insecurity says it is not ready. It is making the call, attending the meeting, raising the hand, starting the project on a Tuesday morning when nobody is watching and no reward is guaranteed. Greatness is almost always built in private, in the unglamorous repetition of action taken before the outcome is clear. Fear of failure is the most expensive luxury a wealth builder can indulge in. Every moment spent protecting yourself from the discomfort of a wrong move is a moment in which the right move is also being delayed. The most successful people in any field are not the ones who failed the least. They are almost universally the ones who failed the most, because they were in motion more consistently than anyone around them. Failure, when you are in motion, is data. It tells you what to adjust, what to abandon, and what to double down on. Failure when you are standing still is simply a label that confirms you never tried. One of those failures builds a future. The other one simply confirms a fear. In 2026, the cost of starting has never been lower, and the cost of waiting has never been higher. The tools available to an ordinary person with an extraordinary idea today would have seemed like pure fantasy to the entrepreneurs of 20 years ago. You can reach a global audience from a bedroom. You can build a product, test a market, launch a service, and receive real feedback from real customers within days of making the decision to begin. The barrier is no longer access. The barrier is no longer capital. The barrier is no longer connection or credential or geography. The barrier, in almost every case, is the internal conversation that runs the moment action is considered, the voice that says not yet, not you, not now. That voice has never built anything. It has only ever protected the comfort of the life you already have. So act. Act badly if you must. Act incompletely, act nervously, act with shaking hands and an uncertain plan, but act. Because here is the truth that every person who has ever built something real from nothing will confirm without hesitation. The clarity you are waiting for before you begin does not arrive before the action. It arrives because of it. Motion creates information. Information creates direction. Direction creates momentum. And momentum, once built, becomes one of the most powerful forces in any human life. But momentum alone, as extraordinary as it is, will only carry you so far on your own. Because the ceiling of what one person can accomplish by themselves is far lower than most people ever realize. And what lies beyond that ceiling is exactly where we need to go next. No fortune in history was ever built in complete isolation, and no version of success worth having was ever achieved entirely alone. The people you surround yourself with are not just company, they are a compass, quietly calibrating the direction of your life every single day. When you stand inside a circle of driven, growth-oriented people, their standards become your standards, and their belief in what is possible begins to dismantle the ceiling you never knew was sitting above you. Every door that opens in your career, every opportunity that finds you before you find it, every introduction that changes the trajectory of your life will almost always trace its roots back to a single relationship. Wealth at its deepest level is a collective construction, built on trust, on reputation, and on the willingness to give generously before you ever ask for anything in return. Choose your circle not for comfort but for growth, not for familiarity, but for the standard they hold you to when you are tempted to settle for less than you are capable of becoming. And so here we stand, at the end of desire, mindset, knowledge, and action, and the final truth is simply this. Everything spoken today already lives inside you, waiting not for permission, but for a decision. The burning desire is yours to claim, the rich mind is yours to build, the mastery is yours to develop, and the circle that will carry you further than you can carry yourself is yours to choose. The only chew.